На правах директора Львівської бізнес-школи Українського католицького університету пропоную розпочати наш захід. Для мене дуже велика честь насправді бути тут. Я про вас багато чула, про клуб, чула про бізнеси, які є членами цього клубу, про важкість сюди потрапити, і це дуже добре насправді. До нас в наш клуб випускників Львівської бізнес-школи теж важко потрапити, треба провчитися 2 роки. А ще бажано захистити диплом і здати всі домашні завдання. Так що я десь розумію, що у всього мусить бути свій шлях. І сьогодні особлива нагода, не знаю, ми тут, напевно, вперше, тому що ми чекали цієї нагоди. Це є гість, якого ми дуже довго думали, наважувалися, шукали, як привезти. І я би сказала, що з вами ми сьогодні ділимося ним ексклюзивно. І це добра нагода, я думаю, що ви її оціните, але після того ви пообіцяєте нам теж приїхати до нас на якихось хороших спікерів до Львова. Можете разом, групою, можете по одному, завжди ми раді, чекаємо, готові. І контакти, я думаю, наші теж буде легко досить знайти. Чи можу я перейти зараз на англійську мову, оскільки анонсовано було англійською мовою, щоб нас шановний гість теж міг почути, що ми хочемо, з чим до вас звернутися сьогодні. So I will switch into English, so that you could also hear and understand how I am preparing these representatives, and I would say that maybe CEO, it's a very hard position. So you are the drivers, you are the leaders, we are sure in it. And what I think about why we are here, apparently with our dear guest, with such a profound experience with working with the leaders and leaders of the world level. We are here because we want business also to not just react, but also participate in these challenges and changes that are right now happening in Ukraine. And they are happening, we see them. And I hope that you see them too. Bad, good, different, but they happen. So I love business very much, I would say. Why? Because it's very flexible. It's very responsive. So how the things changes within the country, business changes the fastest. So that just immediately, I would say, yes, we can pitify, we can say that those changes are bad or something, but we changes. We are very flexible. So, but can we influence, and what depends on business, and how can we do things better and improve them from the not just into the inside into the deeper into business, but also to do something more outside our businesses. So this is important for us too. As Lviv Business School, we see that you should also be providers, and you should also participate in those changes. And also business can't be different than the leaders of the business, the founders of the business. So never there is any other business different than you are. I think that you can agree with me. I know this from my 7 years working within the Lviv Business School, but also my background is from family business. Also, I founded my own business. So the business is like a mirror. So our businesses are what we are. So that is why the leaders, authorities, or just using power. So how we manage. So I would like to first of all invite our speaker, our guest from born in Australia, but from Singapore right now. He was involved in many changes, which maybe I would ask Dr. Williams also to mention them, what changes you participated in, just maybe very shortly. And share his think, how business is or can participate or have what is the role of business in the changes. So also he's the author of 2 books, which I really suggest you to have time to read and also to think about yourself. And I also invite Andrei Rozhdestvitsky, who I think is the author of inviting and really big driver of inviting our dear guest here. He's the chief manager, one of the founders of our Center of Leadership of Ukrainian Catholic University. And I suggest that we have the dialogue, and not just the dialogue between 2 of them, because they had already a lot of time for that. Yes, I also invite you to participate in this dialogue.
Let's go. Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's going to be a bit challenging for me since English is not my first language. Yeah, I have a few questions I would like to ask Professor, but of course this is 3rd day we're together, not counting our meeting in Singapore and many hours of communicating via online. So of course I'd like you will ask these questions. I mean, any questions you have about leadership, but before we'll start, I will ask to add a few more words about Professor Williams. Well, first of all, he used to work many years in Harvard Kennedy School, which is one of the best schools who preparing politicians and governors. Then, I don't know, you've been 2 years living with the tribe in Papua or? Borneo. I still Papua because I've missed the story, the case we had yesterday. So 2 years of living with the tribe and exploring how power works in tribe, how psychology of people works in tribe. Then Dean was main consultant in questions of leadership to President of Madagascar, to President of Mongolia. He interviewed many prime ministers in many countries, including ex-prime minister of Great Britain, Australia, and so on. Consulted Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore in questions of leadership, and was coaching another prime minister who is actually son of Lee Kuan Yew. So which means Dean used to work with the first leaders in the world and has great experience. And of course was participating in many changes as well, and in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, and working with the private sector as well. So many large companies was consulting in questions of leadership within. So the experience is great. And the ideas actually is brilliant, as for me, bright ideas about who is the leader supposed to be, what is the role of the leadership, of the leader, no, what is the role of the leader, but still you see I'm asking, what is the role of the leader, but 2 days ago I discovered that we're usually talking about leader, but we don't have to talk about leader, we have to talk about leadership, and later on you will understand what is the difference. So I have a first question to Dean, and actually I have a few more, but if you want to ask your question, you're welcome. I can ask my questions later on. So my first question is, when we were meeting with the Euro Optimists on Monday in their office, you mentioned that old models of leadership are not working anymore. The models actually which was popular for the last centuries, actually, the model of a strong, tough, charismatic person who leads people towards the, victories and so on. So you mentioned that it's not working anymore, and my first question, why is it not working? And since it's not working, so what is working?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So, what is the old model of leadership? We need to define that. The old model is actually not so old because we still practice it today. And the fact that it's been around a long time suggests that it's worked pretty well. for the last few thousand years. And not much has changed by way of leadership over the last few thousand years. So that's what I mean by the old style of leadership. The old style of leadership focuses on a dominant individual, an authority figure, who is somewhat of a heroic figure, who seems to know a lot, is very courageous, very capable, and becomes the representative of a group, usually a tribe or a band of tribes. And we call them the leader. And in so many groups, so many societies, the so-called leader, particularly if they emerged to the level of king or emperor, they became a representative of the gods. And they were seen as maybe being godlike or having the godlike qualities at least, or maybe they were gods. And terms like the son of heaven in many countries is a popular term. And it's somehow their superior knowledge, wisdom, capability was critical to help a group, a tribe, a collection of tribes, a kingdom, to navigate the complexities of the world and to fight their battles, to defend their territory and defend their space. And groups have put an enormous amount of hope and trust in these kind of characters. Sometimes they've delivered and succeeded. More often than not, they have failed. Because it's a very difficult role to play, and other groups attack you and you get displaced or disposed, or your own people rise up against you because they realize, well, you're not such a god or a great god after all, you're a mere mortal, so like the rest of us. And then, so this is very common, and this is why this word to lead is an ancient word, and it means to go forth to die. You did not know that. It's got an Indo-European origin, and death was equated with the activity of leadership because you were going forth to fight battles and you would get killed. So nobody really wanted to be the leader because you could get killed very easily because you're in the front. You took the first arrow, you took the first spear. If you survived, it was proof that, wow, you must have godlike qualities, so therefore we must honor you and you get to have this big position. So this is a very ancient conversation around leadership. So that's how it emerged. And over the last few thousand years, that model has worked pretty well. When there hasn't been too much complexity, and the primary challenge of an authority figure has been either to defend the group or to bring some order and discipline to the group, like resolve conflicts, help the group figure out, well, you know, how do we deal with the changing condition, whether it's the weather or it's a drought or a famine or the crops are not growing. Do we need to pray harder? Do we need to come up with some kind of new idea or strategy? But it was a pretty predictable role. And however, over the last few decades, say the 21st century and certainly the 20th century, this role of leadership has begun to change. Why? Because with it has come complexity. A complexity that was unknown to the degree that it is known today in the past. Complexity born of technology, the breakdown of borders and boundaries, the emergence of a global economy, the fluctuation of populations and the movement of populations, the competition for resources. It's like, wow, what do we do? How do we address this? And we look to the leader to help us figure it out, and we realize, well, they don't seem to know. Or they don't get it right, and we put so much hope in them, but it doesn't seem to work out. And so this notion of the big man leader, the dominant authority figure, the alpha, male or female, is letting us down. It's just insufficient in dealing with complexity. And the problems that we are facing today, and certainly have been emerging over the last 50 years, at a heightened and a more intense way, that in a very profound way, is leading to greater complexity. And the problems are now interdependent problems, shared multi-dimensional problems, that one tribe, one group, one organization cannot bring resolution to acting alone. It doesn't make sense to be dependent on a single authority figure, even though a single authority figure says, well, you know, vote for me or follow me, I know the way. They don't know the way. They're not more enlightened than you or I. They don't have more wisdom or insight into the future. They cannot predict it. They have no magic power. They're mere mortals. And so you cannot rely on this single authority figure who's the product of a hierarchy and expect them to resolve your concerns. All you can do is depend on them to bring some degree of order, stability to your group, which might be the enemy of creativity and innovation in a complex world. Because these dominant authority figures, tribal chiefs, are very good at operating within an orderly world or a predictable boundary. And the boundary I'm talking about, a cultural boundary, a territorial boundary, a structural boundary, whatever it might be. And we're all very tribal. The tribal impulse is alive and well. That's never gone away. As Andrew said, I've lived with tribal groups and I've studied tribal groups on and off over the last 40 years of my life. And so I understand tribal groups and I understand the beauty of tribal groups. There is a beauty. There's a sense of community and identity and appreciation, and people look out for one another. You can learn a lot from tribal groups. But whether it's a tribe in Borneo or New Guinea, or whether it's a tribe in the Ukraine or a tribe on Wall Street. Wall Street has many different tribes. Or whether it's a big bank and there's multiple tribes inside the bank, the different divisions. The tribal impulse is activated. And we all have our little tribal chiefs who manage the boundaries. And we send them forth to fight the battles. We don't send them forth to kind of do the creative work or to resolve tough problems, but we send them forth to advance the interests of our group at the expense often of other groups. This is a kind of a long answer to your question.
That's fine, that's fine.
So the conclusion is that the tribal impulse has strengths, but now that impulse is an impediment for dealing with complex problems. The tribal impulse is reinforced by authority figures, dominant authority figures, whose primary job is to manage the boundaries, and they're not very good at getting people to cross boundaries and build bridges and engage in the creative work of addressing complex problems. So that's why I say the old model is incomplete or deficient. And the old model also is preoccupied with getting people to follow you. It's like, wow, I'm a leader if people follow me. I'm a leader if I can get people to do what I want done. That doesn't make any sense. Not only does it make sense, it's ludicrous to define leadership in that way. That's the old way of thinking about leadership in going into battle. Follow me into battle. Well, if you're a business, you don't want people following you. You want them to be responsible. The indicator of success in your leadership is not if you're a big man or a big woman and everybody's following you around like little ducklings. is, are they being responsible? Are they getting the work done? Are they creating? Are they building relationships? Are they focused on the customer? Are they addressing the new technologies and trying to introduce them and ensure that they generate meaningful results of value? That's the indicator of success. So throw out the word follower. It doesn't make any sense. So it's like, how do you generate cultures of responsibility where the expression of leadership isn't coming exclusively from a dominant authority figure, but from multiple people who may not have a lot of authority? That's the challenge for today.
Oh, thank you. The next question is, a lot of leaders in the Western world, they started to intellectually to understand this paradigm, but still it's quite hard to switch, from the old-fashioned leadership to the new one. Why?
One, human beings are tribal. Human beings are hierarchical. We have always existed in hierarchies. Those who rise to the top of hierarchies may gain status. They might do it out of competence. They might do it out of connection. They might do it out of resources like money or whatever. And so when you think of bureaucracies, how do you define a bureaucracy? You define it in hierarchical terms. Oh, those at the top and those at the bottom. You look out there, you don't see a top and a bottom. That's intellectually, mentally, that's how we conceptualize it. And so it's almost ingrained in our genetic DNA. It's like we are organized around creating hierarchies. When we have family hierarchies, grandparents, parents, children. So what it means to be human means to kind of operate in complex hierarchies and simple hierarchies, to be looking for authority, for support, for help, whether it's children looking to parents or students looking to a teacher. And so authority is a part of our lives. There's no escape. So we don't want to say that authority doesn't play a role. It plays a very important role. We need authority in the world. It brings order. It manages boundaries. It provides coordination. It resolves conflicts and differences. So there's a role for that. But we mistake authority for leadership. And because we think that leadership and authority are the same thing, and we're looking to the authority to provide the leadership, and we don't realize that we too can be the source of leadership. We can be the expression of leadership. We too can intervene into complex systems. We can intervene into the organization. We can intervene into the community. A business can intervene into the larger society. And that's a form of leadership. And so when we reinterpret leadership as an activity of mobilizing people to face reality, solve tough problems, and create what is needed to improve the human condition and make progress, so leadership becomes a problem-solving process rather than an activity of getting people to follow you, it changes the paradigm significantly. But many people in positions of power have not read the memo that it's changed. They think like, oh, no, I'm the boss, I'm the leader. Everybody's got to listen to me. And so we would all love that to happen, but it doesn't necessarily work well that way. And so it's difficult to change old habits. It's difficult to change cultural values that reinforce certain ways of thinking about leadership. So myself, my colleagues at Harvard have been working on changing the paradigm for the last 30 years. And so, we get to speak on it, we get to influence it. We've literally taught thousands of students through our programs at the university and in places around the world. So I think we're generating a shift, and it's not just us, but tech companies in particular. Just recently I was in California and visited a number of tech companies. Tech companies are becoming flatter, less hierarchical, because they know hierarchies slow everything down, make it very difficult to solve complex problems. So they know that they've got to create a culture of innovation and experimentation, and create a mood that allows these new, younger millennials to express themselves. And so what's driving that is this need for innovation and, of course, profitability. So it makes good business sense. And enough companies have been experimenting and getting successes that others look and say, wow, there's actually a different way of doing this, so let's jump in and see what we can do. And business is great because it's often at the forefront of change, and then others, whether it's in government or other sectors of society, look and say, wow, okay, that works. But then they'll generally say, oh, but that's the profit motive. You know, that's what's driving it. On one hand, yes, but you know, it's more than the profit motive. That's kind of a reason to tackle it, because a business cannot afford to lose money, and you're in the business of making money. But there's more to a business than just making money. In the same way, as a friend or a colleague once said, you know, there's more to life. You need, as a company, you need to make money to be in the business. As a human being, you need to breathe in order to live, to be in the business. But for a human being, there's more to life than breathing. Likewise, in a corporation, there's more to a corporation than just making money. It's sensible, it keeps you going. But a corporation provides jobs, it provides services, it is the glue that holds so much of our economic life and social life together. So when you think of the amount of time we put in business, we're spending more time in business, at work, than we are with our own families in life. When you average out the number of years and hours where you're spent, it's, from what we know, we have one shot at this life, and so a lot of that is spent in the world of work, in corporations and what have you. So they are places, you know, where we have to find meaning and purpose and contribution that's more than just simply making a buck. And so with that comes these big questions of like, well, what is leadership? How do you lead better? What role does leadership play in changing institutions, whether it's a team, whether it's a department, whether it's an organization, whether it's a community, whether it's a nation? They're all kind of big questions that require a lot of deep thought and exploration to generate insight, and insight that ultimately makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, you know, while I was listening for you, just remind me the national challenge of many employers here in Ukraine, especially we have it in Western Ukraine. Like many manufacturers, it's quite hard to find the employees, because now our labor market became part of global labor market, and we don't need a visa to go to Europe. You just can find your new job in Europe using the internet. Just buy a ticket to the bus, cross the border, and for nearest few months or years stay in Europe with a European salary and so on. So now I do understand that it's a great challenge for many employers, and now I'm trying to put myself on the place of a CEO of a big factory, for example, in I don't know, let's say in Lviv district. So I do understand that I don't have enough resources to solve this problem by myself, because it's a like national scale problem, but I do need to go to talk to people and to build with them cooperation, but actually they are my competitors. Some of them on labor market only, most of them in other markets as well. And actually idea of cluster economy is about that we can make so-called competition. We can be competitors in one field, but we can cooperate in another field. But now I'm trying to understand how, well, for example, I've got the idea that this is something we have to do in order to change the situation on labor market and to get a win-win. But then I have somehow to explain to my shareholders, to my employees, to the rest of the people that we are going to cooperate actually with the enemies, with the people whom we were calling on yesterday meeting as an enemy, as a competitor, that we have to kill them, we have to, to win, we have to put them from the first place to the fifth place and became player number one on this market. And now I have to come to people and tell them, listen, they're not enemies anymore, they are our friends, we are building together with them some programs to solve the complex problems. So this is mostly about role of being change agent, right, rather than being a tribal chief.
Yeah.
Can you explain, please, more? So being leader is a change agent. So what are the functions or secrets or ways or mindsets? What is that? What is it all about?
Yeah, so if you look at this activity of leadership and seek to define it, and then look at how to do it. When you break it down, you actually become a change agent, somebody who's orchestrating change. It can be at a small local level, or it can be at a significant level in a sector, or even for a country. You may not be leading the change from beginning to end, but you're activating a process, and others can step forward into that space and do their work and contribute to the work of change. So this is why I say everybody can be a change agent in varying degrees. Some people, if you're the CEO, boy, you get to wrestle with the big kind of changes, the transformational changes of turning a company around. But if you're a manager and you've got a team, well, okay, you can begin to work with your team, and that's how do we create a great team? Well, a great team doesn't exist independent of other teams, and a great team is going to have to work with other teams, because if you're in competition with these other groups, you're not going to be so great for very long, because you need their support, you need their input, you need their creativity, you need them to be working with you to ultimately come up with better ideas and to implement the strategic plan of the organization and what have you. So the change agent is not simply getting people to act or behave differently. That's obviously an important body of work, but you have to shift the perspective, how people interpret the problems that are in front of them. You're changing their perspective, their mindset, how they view the world. And I like what you were saying, Andrew, just in regards to companies. You can be in the same sector, and you can relate to your competition as kind of like a winner-takes-all game, do or die, tribal fighting, and we're going to beat those guys. Now, understandably, there's healthy competition and there's destructive competition. I understand that. We all know that dynamic. But it's really interesting to see, like in Silicon Valley or Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I've lived for a long time, clusters emerge where competitors play off one another. It's like redefining the notion of competition. And so the sharing of resources and employees and knowledge actually strengthens collectively the entire sector. And it's like on a rising tide, all the ships rise. And those that can modify their cultures, their practices, their priorities, and really create great working environments, they seem to innovate faster and better, and people want to be a part of that. Those that struggle are a little bit old-fashioned and negligent in terms of how they build leadership capacity, or maybe they become arrogant or complacent. They start to get left behind. And it's not because of the competition made their lives miserable. It's because they weren't learning fast enough. They weren't responding fast enough. And their own employees didn't even want to be a part of that. So they said, listen, I'm getting out of this. This is not fun. Why do I want to do that? It's just like a Silicon Valley company that I was with just last month. One of the employees, a senior manager, was saying, yeah, I got to leave. I don't like this place. This is a guy who'd worked at Google, worked at other places. I mean, this was a top guy in terms of competence and ability. And any high-tech company would want him, and they try to poach him all the time. And but he's got stock ownership, you know, so it's like, oh, if I leave, I lose this. But then they dangle these carrots over their heads all the time, because there's such a shortage of software engineers, code writers, and all that in the United States. It's unlimited possibilities if that's your area of expertise. And so people are moving in and out and all about, but it actually strengthens the field, and it benefits all. So the change agent and leadership cannot be parochial, tribal. It has to be expansive, take a systemic view, and to look broadly, to have a sense that without getting stuck in small kind of upsets or frustrations or disruptions, and take a much bigger view to appreciate, like you're looking at the open ocean rather than the waves that are immediately in front of you. And it helps you to navigate complexity and have perspective and help others appreciate that perspective and say, okay, this is okay. No, this isn't so bad. But if not, you're always in a reactive mode. And when you're always in a reactive mode, you're not creating. You're just simply reacting. It's like, well, slow down. Kind of chill out. Kind of take a more expansive view. Try to understand the currents of the ocean, the emergence of the weather patterns, the systemic dynamics that are impacting your business, the emergence of new technologies and the potential consequences. That's leadership work. You've got to have your eye on a much bigger picture, because if you're preoccupied with the minutiae, who is doing the big critical thinking to help navigate the complexity of all the disruptions, potential dangers, potential opportunities, real opportunities that are emerging on a regular basis?
Maybe someone already have questions? Yeah.
Hello, so my name is Alex. I'm one of the CEO Club members. Very interesting perspective, and I think everyone here wants to know, maybe have an example of the leader of a new type. I think it's the easiest way to understand this position. Maybe just a few, maybe politician, maybe a businessman or somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not easy to give examples. Why isn't it easy to give examples? You have to, well, put it this way, you have to be very careful about giving examples. I was with the CEO of a large property development firm in Asia some time back. Very successful company that's expanded throughout Asia and China. And we were talking about this kind of question. And he told me this story, how more than 15 years ago, whenever it was, McKinsey was consulting to the firm and said, you've got to come to New York. We want you to meet with the CEO of this company that's doing the most amazing things. You're going to learn about real creative leadership. You're going to learn about innovation. You're going to see kind of how they go about strategy formulation and implementation, re-engineering. You name all the buzzwords. They kind of went through it all and said, you know, you're going to learn here. There's some great stuff going on. I said, okay, I'll go. Because McKinsey was doing some work with them. And also McKinsey was working with this other company. So he went to the US. The week he was there, every day on the front page of the newspaper was a story about this company. And previous years, like Harvard Business School, were also writing case studies about the company. But when he got there, it was on the front page of the newspapers, and it was pretty negative news. It wasn't positive news. And the company was called Enron. Enron. You know the story of Enron. And it was on the verge of collapse, just breaking down. And eventually did collapse. And now we know the story of Enron. Terrible management, lousy leadership, stinking culture, abuse of power, the inability to listen to divergent, dissident opinions, and so a ton of problems. And so I'm very hesitant about putting anybody, any company on a pedestal. Not only in business, particularly in politics. It doesn't work particularly well. So the best you can, for example, Apple, Steve Jobs. Nobody can doubt that Steve Jobs did an extraordinary job. At times, but not always. This is the problem with leadership. Nobody does it well all the time. It's very difficult. So they do well on some things, then they go beyond their capability, or they get confronted with a new set of problems, and their current repertoire of skill is insufficient to deal with those problems. Or they do something very well, and they persist in doing something very well, but the conditions change, and what they were doing in the past doesn't work in the future, and then things fall apart. And so that's why we see technology companies are changing rapidly. Entrepreneurs, you can be the hero one day and the failure the next. So let's not deify, you know that term, deify, and turn these characters into godlike figures. I'm interested in not the personality of leadership, or the person of leadership, or the position of leadership. I'm interested in the activity of leadership. Now, who embodies, who practices some aspects of leadership very well? That's a better question, if I say so myself. Okay. So then we can go to Amazon. Now, Amazon is a very interesting company. Its founder and CEO, it has a bit of personal trouble right now. And so he's going to ride that storm. So I'm sure he'll bounce back. Some things Amazon does well, some things it does poorly. I don't know if you know, but they were about to put in a big plant, factory, headquarters, or regional quarters in New York. And they've just backed away from that. One reason they backed away is the lack of leadership. They didn't even provide sufficient leadership to bring enough of the stakeholders together to fully appreciate what they were trying to do. It was kind of the corporate arrogance, like everybody's going to want us. No, not everybody wanted you. So don't relax on your laurels, on your brand, on your name, and not do the critical body of leadership work that you needed to do. So that was very poor by way of leadership on how they handled that. Nevertheless, okay, as a company, what's a very good thing they do? A couple of good things. And Jeff Bezos is very good at reinforcing this. And that pertains to values, the most critical kind of values that need to be embedded in the culture, and the values around innovation and obsessive focus on the customer. I mean, like, wow, we really have to listen to these people because they're going to be putting demands on us, so don't become complacent. They're always going to keep you on your toes to get us responding. So that's a very positive thing. Now, you and I understand the importance of innovation, but what does innovation look like in practice? Amazon practices it pretty darn well. Because if you want innovation, you have to encourage experimentation. If you want to encourage experimentation at all levels, you have to be willing to fail. If you're willing to fail, you've got to be capable of learning from the failure. If you're going to succeed as an organization, you better learn fast from the failure to incorporate the learnings into the next set of experiments or strategy or whatever. Amazon is darn good at that. That's the strength of it. And it's a reason that company has gone to dizzying heights, you know, over the last 15, 20 years. And so I think that's a wonderful example on the front of business. Now, what about in the realm of politics? There it gets harder, right? Boy, you look at what's going on in the world today. People with great promise. I used to look, for example, at the UK, at Tony Blair. I said, this guy, you know, he's got a dose of charisma, smart, intelligent guy, talking about new labour, kind of a third way, you know, very supportive of free markets, but also knows about ensuring there's enough of a social net that's sufficient to deal with the challenges and demands of poor people as well in the country. Yet it's pretty appalling as it pertains to the lack of leadership that he provided along with George Bush in the United States and taking his country and other countries ultimately into the Iraq War. Very poorly handled. And so now, I'm not saying he's persona non grata in the world today, but he's certainly not viewed as somebody that everybody's racing to listen to. And so it's very disappointing. And this is the problem. People disappoint time and again. Now, he had, his successor was Gordon Brown. And Gordon Brown told me when I interviewed him that his personal biggest failure was as Minister of Finance, Chancellor of the Exchequer, I think they call it in the UK, in 2007 and 8, and his failure to do something about the global financial crisis. As a finance minister, and a very smart man, he's one of the smartest men I've met, Gordon Brown, just brilliant. He understood that financial system so well, he could see the flaws in it. He could see how the American banks had sent this toxic product, these derivative financial products that have been created out of the subprime mortgages in the United States. So they package the mortgage, you turn it into a product, send it out to the global marketplace, and investment banks make money on the transaction. So you move it fast, and boy, you can make a ton of money. You just don't hold on to it, because you know you hold on to it too long, if the market crashes, wow, you're left holding it, and that's so much debt, and there's no substance to it, and your institution goes down. So Lehman Brothers collapsed because it had overly leveraged of this product. So it went down. And European banks had over half of these products and the American subprime debt in their economies. Gordon Brown could see it. But he said, trying to do something about it was so hard. Politically it's hard because your own people wonder, well, what are you working on? We don't understand it. And politicians go for the low-hanging fruit. They don't go for the big stuff because it takes too long, it's too hard to explain, and nobody applauds you for success. So if you're going to get re-elected, you go for the easy stuff, the quick win, and you neglect the big stuff, but you neglect it at your own peril. So he describes that as the biggest failure. But his success, Tony Blair lost power, and his next big job was Prime Minister. And he was Prime Minister when everything crashed, and in the midst of the crash. And he provided outstanding leadership then. He said, boy, we've got to do, he was great in the crisis. Now there's urgency. People are like, yeah, what do we do? What do we do? He stepped forward, brought the international community together, figured out with them this creative work of what needs to be done to ensure no further damage happens. How do we pump more currency into the financial markets to keep it alive? And what's the regulatory changes that are needed in Europe, and even elsewhere in the world, United States and what have you. I mean, they started to address those concerns, and it was amazing, that kind of work that he did. So, I mean, there's two examples. People do things well, and they do things poorly. Speaking of the UK again, people, whenever I ask people, tell me who you think is a great leader, the same people come to mind. Gandhi, Churchill, what have you. Churchill. Great leadership? Yes. In World War II. No denying how brilliant he was in holding the British people together. Inspiring them to give their all and not cower before the German onslaught. Okay, great, good work. But if you ask my grandfather, who's since passed on a long, long time ago, he fought in Gallipoli in 1915, fought the Turks. The Australians, went off and fought in Gallipoli. And Gallipoli was a tragedy. It was a lost war. And we celebrate this every year in Australia. April 25th is Anzac Day, when the Anzac, the Australian New Zealand soldiers, went to fight battle. And they lost the battle. Not too many countries celebrate battles that they lost, but we celebrate that in Australia. Tens of thousands of Australians and British were lost, and they died and they perished. And the admirals and the generals back then, the British said, no, we should never do this. This is a battle we should not fight. We cannot win. The losses will be too great. But a young, arrogant, cocky, know-it-all Minister of Defense, so to speak, called Winston Churchill in his 30s, like 35, said, no, we do it. And he was, when everything failed, he was thrown out of the cabinet. Get out of here, we don't want to know you anymore. Even the old Winston, who when he wrote his memoirs, talked about, yes, I messed up. I carried that in my life. So, we're talking about something that's very difficult work, and it's problematic work, it's challenging work, and you're talking about something that it's not just one style, one approach, one leader. The problems we're facing are complex, they're multidimensional. Okay, they're multidimensional. Therefore, how we lead needs to be multidimensional. What does that mean? Well, you need to come at a problem through many angles. Sometimes you need to hold things together. Maybe the economy is going down. Maybe the threats are too great. How do you hold things together, maintain things until the storm passes? Okay, that's a challenge. Sometimes you've got creative work. You've got to invent something. You've got to bring something new into existence. How do you generate a culture of innovation and creative work where, boy, you really are coming up with new product? And that's a difficult thing to do because creativity is so difficult to sustain before people are like, oh, it's so hard. Like with what Amazon does. For 1,000 failures, you only get one success. Wow, that's depressing. So from a leadership point of view, you've got to manage that. Sometimes you've got to develop new capabilities, and people don't want to develop those capabilities. And so leadership is needed to address that. Sometimes leadership is needed to transition the culture from one set of values to another. How do you do that? Wow, that's a tough one. Now, what about a crisis we're talking about? Now, okay, boy, all hell is breaking loose. The global financial crisis is crashing. Oh, well, the neighboring tribe over there is now attacking. Whoa, gosh, some critical members of the group have just perished in a plane crash. And it's like, now we're thrown into chaos. How do you manage in a time of crisis? Or maybe everybody's just asleep, getting cocky, getting arrogant, getting complacent. And you've got to shake them up like an activist. Wake up, face the reality of the problem. They're all leadership activities, and every one of those activities requires something different of you. If you're one-dimensional and you come at it from the same angle, you're only going to perpetuate the problem. Now, we're asking a lot of any individual, then if you can't do it, you must manage with a network of partners. You need a whole group of people around you to be able to kind of take on this work. So therefore, the leadership work has to be distributed. And you need to allow the expression of leadership in different areas of an organization and create the conditions for that to flourish, and not use your authority to step in and close it down. There it becomes a very kind of negative effect rather than an empowering effect. Yeah.
Thank you for a very interesting story and your experience. I was really much surprised about your 2 years in the tribe, and may I reflect on that. That seems to me that depending on the situation, you might be a very much proactive leader with a modern notion of technology, whereas when in a tribe, you really need to take a big stick and sometimes fight, you know, and be a leader in the way of a notion that you said in the very beginning of this evening. My question would be, now we all see and realize a lot of disruptors in the economy and every day of our life, leadership and the concept of leader. What are the main disruptors or complete change of the concept of this notion now? What would you see? Would you see it as a technology? Would you see it as a change of mentality? Can you give like 2 or 3 factors of this disruption in the leadership now?
The things that are causing the disruption, or how to respond to the disruption?
No, that are causing the disruption, that are making a complete change.
Yeah, oh boy. I'll share some thoughts. I'm sure you can kind of, you guys can answer those questions as well as I can. But, wow. Okay, so yeah, the world is changing before us. You know, we're in it. We're participating in it. There's no doubt about that. And technology is changing the game. Artificial intelligence is changing the game. The need for innovation is changing the game. It's so dynamic, so fast. Biotechnology is changing the game and will continue to change the game. I mean, these are going to be, it's already disrupting, you know, like Uber and Grab, you know, over the last, 5 years in parts of the world, you've had taxi drivers out there on strike because they don't want Uber or Grab or whatever, in their areas. But that's changing. In 5 years' time, we'll see self-driving cars, and that's going to be another disruption, and a huge disruption. What do you do? Everybody can get in a self-driving car, go wherever they want. You want all those cars on the road? It's a whole new set of problems and issues. It's got a huge disruption. And you listen to the theorists, and not only theorists, but those at the cutting edge of these new technologies, talking about what these new technologies can do. It almost sounds like humans are going to become obsolete. It's like, well, what do we do? Yeah, all the jobs will be done. You're not going to need lawyers. You're not going to need doctors. These artificial intelligence, in 50 years' time, maybe a lot earlier, will actually be able to do the surgery on an individual. This is the sort of things they can talk about. Replace a heart. Like, oh, wow. It's amazing what's going to be happening. And so from now on, it's disruption all the way. That's the journey. And with that, though, comes a whole new set of leadership questions. And those questions and challenges are moral, ethical questions. What are we going to let go of as humans? What are we got to hold on to as humans? What are the potential moral consequences, ethical dilemmas that we have to confront as we wrestle with all those issues? At the most basic level that we're all experiencing today are issues around cybersecurity, for example, where all your knowledge, all your data is accessible, could be hacked, could be stolen, or could just simply be used by any government or any company because, one, they have it, and you've kind of click the box that says they can have it. And so megadata can be used in very negative, destructive ways. And so this is going on all the time. Now, but also, having said that, there's such extraordinary opportunity as well. And so to be around technology companies to see how they deal with this is quite exciting and scary, because you're seeing 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds playing with our future. And you wonder to what degree they're even considering the moral implications of what they're doing. It's a bit like, remember the dot-com era? You created a business 20 years ago, you put .com to it, and then you did an IPO, and then all of a sudden, you became a multi-millionaire. It's like, wow. That company doesn't mean anything. No, it doesn't mean anything. But look, we had .com on it, and then it's like it had no substance. And so people are they're like going to Las Vegas. They're playing at a lottery, but they figured out how to win at the game. And we are seeing this a lot in technology today. So you go out, you create a business, and then you're going to turn it into an IPO. You're going to raise this cash, and then you're going to sell it, and then you're going to make your money, and you move on to the next big thing. So who's there for the long term? Who's asking these big questions, these concerns? I don't know. And this is the leadership work. Leadership work is sense-making work. Sense-making work is connected to how we interpret the world and the values by which we operate in the world. So they become very important leadership questions. Now, let's go back 500-600 years in history, when the world was also in a state of chaos. Your part of the world was in a state of chaos. And the Byzantine Empire was collapsing. Constantinople was coming to an end. Istanbul was now emerging. The Ottoman Empire had conquered so much space through blood and horror, and so all those great battles. And so a lot of people were out of a job in Constantinople. And the Medici family in Florence, Italy said, come over here, be a part of the work. We've got money, but boy, we've got some great artists and scientists. We want to do some exciting things, not only for Florence, but for the world. And so, who else is in Florence, Italy at that time? Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli, on and on and on it goes. You got some outstanding artists. And so you got the big boss, the Medicis, they got the money, they're bankers. But boy, they're enlightened bankers. They really see the potential to use their money, use their power to create the conditions for changing the world, and they have changed the world. And what they did, and what these educators who came across from Constantinople brought a whole new way of thinking about the world. This was like the end of the Middle Ages, moving into a more enlightened period. It was threatening. It was threatening to the church, who wondered, what are you doing? What are you up to? Why are you studying Plato? Why are you studying Aristotle? Well, why are you studying these characters, from 1,500 years ago? It's like, a lot of sensitivities. But Da Vinci and others would come together, and with these new teachers thinking about, with technology, their version of technology at the time, and they were doing creative stuff. How do we use that to elevate human nature? And so when you create a statue of David, or when you create this marvelous image, this painting, or when you created a building of extraordinary architecture in the town square, not just in a palace to be locked away where nobody sees. Everything was an intervention into the society to cause people to step back and think, wow, I can do more, I can grow, I can develop. To see God inside yourself, to see the seeds of deity, of dignity, of possibility in yourself. And this ignited creative self-expression and collective cooperation in art, in sculpture, in science, in painting, in architecture, in philosophy, in physics, in math, etc., etc. Eventually the church stepped in and tried to close it down. I don't know if you've ever heard the term bonfires of the vanities. It's an interesting term. Bonfire, like a big fire, of the vanity, vain things. A mad monk called Savonarola, he acted on behalf of the church, said, these people have gone too far, we must put an end to it. And he gained power with his right-wing fundamentalist group, and they got control of Florence and told everybody, bring your paintings, bring your statues, bring your gold, bring all your vain things into the town square and burn them. So you've got, millions of dollars of these just magnificent art pieces just being burnt. And then a year later, people got fed up with that and said that wasn't a good idea. And so they brought Savonarola, the mad monk, to the town square, and they burnt him. So, but it speaks to, it's such an interesting period because it raises all these other leadership questions on what's got to be managed. The sense-making process, managing rebellion and opposition, stimulating creative work, asking the moral, ethical questions, and thinking about how do these disruptions in the world, how can we use it to really add value in the world? And these are the kind of the big things that we need to be thinking about going forward. Because I get a sense that nobody's in charge. When you look at who's in charge, no one's in charge. Are you in charge? No, I thought you'd say yes. Okay, I'm not in charge either. So it's like, okay, nobody's in charge. Everybody's out doing their own things. And so the need for partnership, the need for support, the need for people to be working across boundaries together on behalf of something that's more meaningful, boy, we've got a huge challenge. If we don't get it right, yeah, the future is very worrisome. So I'm a combination of optimism and pessimism. It's like, depending on the day, I could be here, I could be there. I think we all kind of feel those sentiments, and we get excited by the possibility. But when we see so much of what's going on in the world, and people's inability to do the leadership work, real leadership work around complexity, as they retreat from their European Union, or as they flee to their ethnic enclaves, as they start fighting wars that should never have been fought in the first place, or they're unresolved from 100 years or 1,000 years ago. It's like, why are you fighting that battle? Let go, move on, do something else. So all is not well in the world, but we also sense that there's a lot of great possibility in the world. And we all get inspired by seeing people at all levels of society fronting up and being change agents to do something about these problems in the world. So that gives me the hope. That gives me that optimism, in a sense that there's enough good people out there that are going to keep the fire burning, keep the issues alive, and try to make a difference. And my sense is this. It's just a sense that business can do way more than they currently do, all around the world. Because, as I said, it's so central to our lives. And business cannot, I know there's enough work to do in a business to create a functioning, productive, healthy business that actually is sustainable and grows. I understand that. Boy, there's plenty to do. But in our lifetimes, in the past, business was not such a respected activity. You go back to old Japan, if you're engaged in business, that's kind of dirty work. Making money, whoa, to be a samurai, that's noble work. To be an educator, that's noble work. To be a philosopher, that's noble work. And now, over the last 100 years, this activity called business has changed the world. And over the last 20 years, boy, with this new technology companies and biomedical companies and you name it, one after the other. Even the big companies are breaking down and new companies are emerging. It's an exciting period. Entrepreneurial activity, a kind of exciting activity. And so business is central to all our lives. We're all connected to phones, to business in some way or another. And so it's wonderful to see business people, men and women, and CEOs and others who kind of create these things, step forward and go beyond the confines of their business world to think on how they can make a greater difference in the larger community. Whether that difference is about supporting civil society, putting pressure on politicians and government to get their act together and stop their nonsense, to be there to convene people to think about a higher possibility and the strategies needed to go forward. Because there's so much competence and capability in business, skills in business, a lot of people others don't have. And so to bring that with patience, sensitivity and care, but encouragement, support, and occasional provocation, actually generates a healthy climate because you're all in it together. This becomes very, very important. Yeah.
We have 5 minutes only, so one short question. We can.
Thank you, Professor. My name is Julia. I was your student in 2012 in Kennedy School.
Yeah, you Julia?
Yeah, Julia.
Julian.
Yeah, I was, you were a lecturer in the leadership program for Ukrainians in 2012.
Oh, I remember, you were there.
Yes,
Okay.
so it's a pleasure finally to see you in Kyiv, and thanks to Okut for giving us that option.
Yeah.
So actually I have one question, like I've read your books, I've admired your lectures, and you're talking about the leadership, and for me it was a big change of what we were seeing, like a leadership as the leader, as one of the personality, the strong personality. I was first challenged by the idea of the leadership as a process, and actually, but what I think have here in Ukraine a lot, both in the business sector and the public sector, still that kind of the leadership as the process we are missing. And from your standpoint, are there some tools or there are some advices how we can all cultivate that leadership among our companies, organizations, or the governments? So is there any advice to us, the persons, how we can support that leadership processes in the businesses we work on, the companies we are leading?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so, I'm sure you're all doing it in some way or another. And the fact that you're here tonight, and we're a small group, so it's great. This is like, well, there's an interest. And you want to be a part of the conversation. The fact that there are academies, institutes, colleges, and universities now putting a lot of emphasis on this is really positive. But in the business world, you've got to internally in your companies spend a lot of time on leadership education, leadership development, leadership coaching, leadership mentoring. It needs to be central in a business. Don't be treated all as nothing more than a technical exercise and structural exercise and let's just let competence rise to the top. No, you've got to consciously build that capability. And you've got to support the building of that capability in society. I remember a long time ago, this was in the 1980s, I had spent a few years in Japan when I was younger. I went when I was 18 and to learn about Japan, and so it's such an interesting country. And then I went back again in the 1980s, so in my 20s. And there's a company called Panasonic. You know it? Matsushita Panasonic company. And the founder of the company, his name is Konosuke Matsushita. He was like 90 years old when I was there. And it's really interesting because in Japan, back in the 1980s, everybody talked about Japanese management. They wanted to learn how, wow, these Japanese are amazing. They're so successful. There's so much a fine attention and an obsession with quality. And we could all learn from that, and the world did learn a lot from that. Now, Konosuke Matsushita, a successful businessman, but so frustrated with his country for multiple reasons. He's feeling there's too much consensus, and the consensus often leads people not to challenge the status quo, to play it safe. He was worried about innovation going forward in the future. I mean, this guy's like a prophet. You know, over the last 20 years, Japan hasn't done a lot in the realm of innovation. It's got its career, South Korea has zoomed ahead, but Japan struggles. There's been innovation, but it's been a struggle. Not easy. It's had 20 years of recession. So he saw this. So, okay, he's from the world of business. He takes responsibility for his country and says, I've got to do something about it. What am I going to do? And that's why I was there. He said, I'll create my own leadership academy. I will pay for any young man or woman who's a graduate of a university, you got a degree, already learned something, so this is like a master's degree. I'll pay you for 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years to join this academy. We'll study leadership, and you all have to have a project. Maybe the project is to go out into a city and help it become a cosmopolitan global city. And you're not the mayor, but you're going to do something. Maybe you're going to work on an environmental challenge, like plastic bottles and what have you, in the ocean, and you're going to clean things up. Maybe you're going to work on issues of immigration and expanding the mentality of Japanese people so they can be more tolerant, accepting, and curious about other people, because Japan's very homogeneous. So that anybody could come with a challenge. And because he felt that the current, back then the prevailing institutes, academies and universities weren't providing sufficient mind-expanding, paradigm-shifting education that would make a difference in the world. So he created his own. And out of that came a whole new realm of change agents who went into so many sectors, business, government, civil society, international organizations, and started to do and continue to do a lot of good in the world. That's one way business can support things. You become a part of the conversation. You use what power you have as leverage to support the emergence, development, the growing, the inculcation of leadership capacity for politics, for governance, for business, for civil society, all those things. That becomes really important work. And you show up to events like this, and then you bring people into the conversation. You read about this kind of work. You write about your experience. This is your playing field. This is your vegetable patch. You know, you're here. You get to write about it, particularly those of you who are doing some pretty interesting things. You should be blogging about it. You should be on social media talking about it. You've got to find creative ways to get your message out and say, boy, the times they are changing. You've got to be a change agent and help people not only to change, make sense of change, but to take a step into the great unknown and do change. And that's business has to do that anyway, so why not help the larger society tackle that kind of work? Treat it as a Renaissance process, just like they did 500-600 years ago. Turn it into a Ukrainian Renaissance. Give it a very positive twist. Like, yeah, we know that all hell has been breaking loose in this country for the last, decade or something, but turn it into something positive. What are we going to create? Get the politicians on board. That way you can hold them to account and reduce the amount of nonsense that goes on in the realm of politics that only makes matters worse, and create the condition not only for business to flourish, to civil society to flourish. And with that, there's a lot of messiness. People don't get it right, so support the experiment. Learn from the experiment and say, that's great. So, hey, be the change agents that change your society and contribute in all sorts of ways to changing the world.
Thank you. On this positive statement, I think that we can finish our official part of our meeting and start to conversate and to make some network. The only thing I would like to add, I cannot add something, you know, Professor, but the only thing that I'm getting over and over and over again while, you know, talking to you that the world has changed, which is obvious, and we need to change our leadership, which is not so obvious sometimes, especially for Ukrainian leaders. And in order to change the rule of the game and to make our world better, our country better, and it looks like that business is supposed to be the leader, those one who goes forward to that, right? Because we are proactive, because we have resources, and because we get used to do it every day in our business. So thank you very much. Thank you, Professor, being with us.
Thanks for having me. Very good.
І ну, я так розумію, що я не член CEO Club, але я підозрюю, що має бути ще якесь неформальне спілкування, тому запрошуємо всіх на неформальне спілкування.